My kids go to public school. They're on the school bus, and all the time they still like, please, can I be a parent transport? And for our family and logistics and sanity, it's just not in the cards. But there's always going to be that difficult individual that they're going to come across. But to be that person, though, that your child will come to you when there's difficulty so that you can advocate and help be and carry their voice when they need their voice carried farther than they're able to.
Welcome to Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan. I'm Dr. Dan. This show is about making the world a more loving, accepting, and compassionate place, one parent, one person, and one child at a time. The key to raising healthy and engaged kids is for parents to seek the same in their own lives while striving to be the best versions of themselves each day. No matter who you are or where you came from, with increased awareness, you can be purposeful about leaving a healthy footprint for your children, your family, and all those you care about while living your own life to the fullest. Today's show is And That's Okay. I'm Wired Differently with Erin Geddes. From the world of constructing creative advertising visuals, Erin sees life differently and thinks that's okay. Her children see the world differently, and that's okay. Her mission is to support kids, families, and public communities to be okay with viewing the world just a bit differently, and it's what gives us reason to celebrate. Her new children's book, which we're going to be talking about today, among other things, is And That's Okay, I'm Wired Differently, celebrates the vibrant, silent world of neurodivergent kids and their families. Erin enjoys fine woodworking, photography, and many other creative mediums the wind might blow to her while living in the Midwest. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on your new book, which I'm holding here for everyone to not see, but to visualize with their creative minds. It was a journey. You've talked about a multi-year journey, and I'm not talking about your life journey, which we're going to get into, which led to this, but let's just start with the journey of this visual children's book.
Well, like a lot of things, I think journeys happen on impulsiveness and naivety. Otherwise, we'd never start them to begin with.
Exactly. So was there a particular moment? I know your kids left for school one day, your 3 kids, and you sat down, you just, something came to you like, I need to do something. I need to write something.
Yes. I was just kind of relishing that the kids were back in school and my computer, and it just kind of came to me on impulse and go, and so I just started tapping away and writing something, and I'm like, okay, I wrote something, just sat down there, hyper focused, just bang it out, and then go, this would be kind of neat for a children's book. Oh, all right. Well, how do you get published? How hard? What's this? What's a literary agent? What's a query? What's this? And there down the rabbit trail I went.
You went and you succeeded with a result. And I'm wondering, was there something that was going on? You write about your 3 neurodivergent kids and your own adult coming to neurodivergence. Was there something going on in the lives of your kids at that time as they're going off to school that made you say, like, I have to put something out there so people understand that different is okay?
Well, I mean, really, it was just stuff that had been continuing going on. I mean, I had my diagnosis. My daughter, I think, we were in and had just gotten hers or was in that process. But there was just something, that mom's intuition, that said that there was something more going on. I mean, we had the IEPs, we had some of the prior ADHD um, diagnosis way early before, but just still something else was just going on, and there's the school side of things, and then you have the social home life side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was just the this, but just at home or outside of home or school or church or wherever you're in the community, there's still that social aspect
Mm-hmm.
that really just it just something was different. I mean, yeah, you're not supposed to pay your kids, but I don't know, like just kind of like, well, there's, how far apart are you? You just a few inches away from each other differences, or are
Mm-hmm.
you like, you know, arm length of differences apart from your kids and other kids? And, the things that I had handled and experienced growing up, I was just kind of seeing some similarities. And, oh, this is not like joyful similarities.
Mm-hmm. Was it often, in my experience, both personally and in my work in the therapy office, the counseling office, is so many times parents start to see themselves differently or understand themselves differently or ask questions that they didn't previously ask as they are dealing with their child's differences, struggles, the process of testing, of diagnosis, of IEPs. And are you saying that a similar thing was also happening for you?
I know for some, it's like, the parent notices the child's having difficulties, and then they seek help for the child, and in the process of seeking that help and looking at and going through those evaluations, pre-diagnostics, other, they go, huh, this is kind of sounding a lot like me,
Right.
where I already had that,
Mm,
but my kids were still their own people. Nothing was absolute, but also things were not classical. And at one point, as I was mulling things over, like many moms do, doing half a dozen other things, I think it came with one of it was just like, Erin, connect the dots. And
mhm, mhm.
seeking, and I'm like, okay, and just really having to be to kind of advocate for my children, even with providers, or where they're like, oh no, they couldn't be autistic because they were making eye contact. I'm like, well, you also asked them their like very coveted special interests, so of course they are.
Right, right. Oh, man, the nuances. The nuances. I mean, sometimes there aren't nuances. It seems pretty clear, but in my experience, there are so many nuances that can mask some of the profiles, and often it's strengths, right? It's a lot of the strengths end up masking some of those underlying challenges, and it's harder and harder to decipher. And case in point for you, now, granted, um, we're learning more and more about autism in females, and his what we're learning is a lot of those diagnoses are not picked up in females, both ADHD and for autism, until later in life, just because the training and the ideas about those profiles often seem very geared towards male profiles, right? And girls and women are different, and so I'm curious if you don't mind saying, how old were you when you actually received your diagnoses, and what was that like for you to get those labels at the time?
Well, the ADHD came after about where I had been married for just about a year, and I was 27.
Mm,
And it was ADHD, it was the general anxiety, depression, comorbidities.
mhm.
And so it's just like, okay, it made sense of a lot of things. I remember them asking me, like, oh, do you purposely avoid at all trying to not drive during rush hour because you're tired of sitting in the car? And I'm like, yeah, like,
Hmm.
like, oh, yes. Just questions that people don't typically ask. And I'm just like, whoa. Um, and so that was one part of kind of the thing. And then it wouldn't be um, 10, 12 years later
Oh.
until the autism one. But at the time, the ADHD, the DSM 4 did not let the dual diagnosis stand.
Mhm. Mhm. All the rules, right? All the rules of putting
Yeah.
people in boxes, which I don't know. I always think of that famous statement: "To define is to destroy." Like those boxes are important, and then also it ends up losing all of the essence of and the nuances and the complexities of humans.
But like boxes, we can overflow out of boxes.
Yes. So
We got to
you are
start somewhere.
you have to start somewhere. So you then are how old are your kids when you get the autism diagnosis?
My kids' ages or
Yes,
my age.
your kids, how old were your kids when you received that 12 years later your autism diagnosis?
My kids at that time were like 6.
So they were not yet diagnosed with autism. They're in elementary school, the oldest probably in middle school or approaching middle school. You get this diagnosis of autism. And so what I'm curious about is what what was that like for you and how did it impact you getting your diagnosis of autism at that age?
Well, if anything, that I found that when I got the autism diagnosis, it was probably for the first time in my life, I authentically and honestly felt like I could give myself grace for all my shortcomings,
Mm,
for all the things I still just couldn't seem to get. That I didn't. It's not that I felt dumb, but it was just kind of like, oh, if I just did a little more, or if I just, and then you get a case of the adjusts.
mhm. Mhm.
And it's even before I had was able to get the evaluation, I through my own research and going through and reading, I had a moment that was almost the way I guess you could describe a God moment where I just kind of sat back in my chair and had a very physical confirmation of, oh my goodness, I'm autistic.
Mm,
When everything just aligned right, uh, just felt very still, a confirmation from a higher power that no, I wasn't crazy. Like this is resonating,
mhm.
and this is not an influence because, oh, you were watching TikTok videos about this and you
Mhm. Mhm.
start to become it. I didn't look into any of that. I was going through other ways, so I wasn't necessarily influenced, but I started having that kind of push or questioning and seeking for a diagnosis because I was just noticing, even as a parent, I wasn't feeling certain things that I felt like a lot of other parents do feel or participate in or enjoy of
Mhm.
being a parent.
Mhm. Mhm. My experience with clients when later teenagehood, especially when they're seeking themselves, and young adult and older adult is very similar to what you are saying. It's like it's validating, and it's like it's this deep breath of like I almost like I'm now home in myself. Like this makes sense, and now I understand myself better. And in a sense, I think what you're saying is I don't have to necessarily beat myself up or apologize or try to fit the mold in all of these other areas, which just don't seem to fit so well.
Very, very much so.
Hmm. Well, and that brings me to one of your something you wrote in the book, which made me smile. Is you said I often felt like a Phillips head screwdriver in a flathead world.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I can do things like other people do, but I have to do it in a different way.
Hmm.
I have to get over the wall where everyone might just get a running start and leap and grab onto and get themselves up. I might have to find somewhere else along the wall where the footholds are different, or there's a crack, or I can bring a ladder or something and attach or bolt footholds into the wall to get over to the wall.
Hmm. Hmm. Which is a highly creative process, and I think that's the other thing that is so much a part of your literary and visual life is creativity. And really, when now I'm talking about all neurodiverse individuals, I can say what I believe they have in common, even though there's so much variability and neurodivergence, is
Like
the
the
need.
ultimate 31 flavors and
Exactly,
beyond.
and beyond, and yes, and everything in between, is that these individuals need to be creative throughout the day to navigate different aspects of the world, that relate to their difference. So, my example as a dyslexic, and one that I didn't know until adulthood, was I always had to do school differently. I still have to do learning differently. I always had to figure out a way to try to get the information into my brain so I can remember it, which was almost always different than the way it was being taught. And so that's just a learning example, and which is different than, of course, a social processing example, right? Like, so what would you say when it comes to navigating that social world? And I'll say, like, oh, remembering when our kids were in elementary school, the overwhelm of all the parent stuff and all of the activities and all the volunteering, that is really overwhelming. And I can only imagine when there's sensory issues and maybe some social processing challenges, that just goes up a lot of levels.
Very much so. I remember when my daughter had started elementary school, I'm like, oh, well, if you're a mom and you're maybe not working outside the house, then you're supposed to volunteer and join the PTA. And I went in for the first time, and they're talking about things, and then my creative brain is going like, well, what if we did this and such and such? And then I kind of started to pick up real fast that I was just kind of there to be a pulse or an echo chamber, that they had their thing. They really didn't want to change things. And, and then the principal would go, oh, but thank you for the suggestions, kind of like, oh, I guess I just need to say this, but it
Hmm.
really wasn't a very collective, like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we've been doing. And we really don't have any interest to change anything.
Hmm.
And seeing, I'm all to be a leader, but I'm not going to beg to be a leader, to beg for an opportunity, and I never returned.
Mm. So what's so interesting to me about that story is what is commonly known about individuals on the autism spectrum is difficulties with aspects of social processing. But there are so many strengths that are not talked about, and people unfortunately always focus on the deficits, because right there, you picked up on really quickly the social dynamics of the situation.
Because I didn't have to be a part of the equation. I could just sit and kind of observe. And so all of my bandwidth could just be to observe, listening and watching everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I have to then be a part of it, oh, that strength gets kind of toggled off. And then it's just, there's a lot of question marks.
Yes, yes. But again, so what I like is that we're talking about the variability and the nuances of, in this case, your neurodiverse profile, which is that if you're in the middle of the social milieu dynamic, there's only so much bandwidth and there's a lot coming at you that you're in. So it's harder to decipher and navigate. But when you're on outside the fishbowl and looking in, you're really able to follow and track the dynamic.
Very, very much so. It's looking at all these little tiny details that a lot of people who are neurotypical kind of never acknowledge or notice. I mean, I can still go back and visualize that room and how the people were sitting at this head table, like a board meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had those experiences as well. So you also talk about just you've always seen the world differently, right? And it's these differences are assets, but you're not always made to feel like they're assets.
Pretty much. I mean, people all get, oh, you're so creative, and they're in awe. And typical response for me is, I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't pay the bills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The,
No.
the, the
Yes.
qualitative and the quantitative measures of success and
Right.
of what is a rich and full life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is everyone's own journey in the context of reality, which is we got to make money, we got to pay our bills, we got to do all these things. And though I think it's important that how, as we age, how we define for ourselves what are those qualities of a successful life? Like, what are those things that are important to us?
Exactly.
Okay, and since we're on there and we're going deep really quick, what
Oh,
yeah,
shocker.
yeah, yeah, where are you right now on what you believe are the qualities, characteristics, aspects of a successful life?
Really, I think of when you've had a hard day, do you have people who can make you laugh, who are loyal to maybe put some of the things that they maybe would like to do, pause their show, their binge watching, and go, all right, this person needs me. I can stop this and I can come and I can help support and be there for that person. It's not those people necessarily there for all the big things in life. It is for the everyday minutia of needs.
Mm,
Of, do you have those people in your life? Can you help support those people? Can those people help support you? Um, are you always at the mercy of other whoever wants creative, where you may have a great job and money, but then you take all that money and you're paying other people to be creative, or can you figure out and learn and make those things yourself?
mm,
Uh, the For me, sometimes, like, oh, success is, we were able to get through a whole week of what's for dinner.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And is someone going to, everyone have something on that table that they're going to be able to eat?
Yes.
And I did it not just one week, but I did it 2 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You hear that, everyone? Listeners, it's Erin's breaking it down for us. The important, I think this is the important things in life: relationship, love, support, community, creativity, and feeling successful at times when you just get through the day and week, because we know that those days and weeks can be really hard, whether it's something we're dealing with in our own life and also for many of us in the community dealing with the challenges of raising children these days, which is challenging if you have a neurotypical child in today's climate and education system. And then if you add on neurodiversity and the differences that go with that, it just takes it to another level. And so it is important to celebrate those successes that happen each day.
Very much. It's like, oh, they're like, oh, that's so great. And I'm like, oh, that's why they pay me the big bucks. Very facetiously.
Yes. As the genetic apple usually does not fall far from the genetic tree, lo and behold, you end up with 3 neurodiverse children wired differently with the same labels that you have. And I'm wondering, when did you start to have, and I know that you have 3 different kids, so you can take this any way you want, but when did you start to notice, I think they're seeing the world differently too?
Well, I think of all things, it's kind of funny because before, for my youngest, autism wasn't even on the radar. But my youngest, when it came to him and eating food, when we're introducing new foods and such, I just found, he is very picky. Not even a year old.
Mm-hmm.
Where you think, all right, and you go to a restaurant and you look at the kids menu and you just look at the thing and go, is there anything on here he'll eat?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think some of the other stuff with the kids and me, it was just, that was our normal. So it's like, oh, all right, well, this makes sense to me because this is my normal, and they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
doing some of that. All right, so that's just normal, and air quotes. But when my youngest was starting school, there were some things where we were telling you, like, well, we maybe have wondering if maybe he is, and forgive me using the term at that point because I didn't know better, but of that high functioning autistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And kind of was questioning some things with some behaviors, but that it's funny. It was the youngest
Mm-hmm.
that I thought maybe just because he had some other things where, oh, that was different.
Yeah.
That was his normal different. That was different than our normal different.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a really important point because there's so much positive that comes out of neurodiverse parents having neurodiverse kids, in the sense the differences are normal differences they're not seen as differences because it's like this is part of the family. Like there's family traits across all families. They're just different. But so like, oh yeah, this person's a talker, or this person is is more introverted, or this person gets overwhelmed with loud noises, or this person just has very specific morning rituals or eating habits. And so these things are embraced in families where there are other similarities. And
Oh,
the
and
other
here's the
side,
wild card, though.
yes, yes.
Just to throw this in, I got my ADHD diagnosis when I was, a year after we were married. My husband gets an ADHD diagnosis several years after mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to bring him
The
into it, but
plot
I
thickens.
knew he was he's part of the genetic tree there, and I'm like, so there's got to be more there. So yes, beautifully neurodiverse, and wow, like these aha things. And the flip side is, when you're seeing things that are normal to you, it's not usually until the kids are in the world in these organized programs and education systems when we start to get messages maybe from the teacher, or that, hey, something is not right, or they're behind on this, or we're concerned about this, or our kids come home really miserable because they're overwhelmed, anxious, and unfortunately, it's sometimes being teased and bullied. And so there's these different roads that happen within a neurodiverse family. And because I noticed that ARFID is in the book as one of the beautiful profiles, I'm wondering if ARFID was this picky eating. ARFID was basically the road in to his autism diagnosis, because that's the thing that you notice, the picky eating.
Probably,
Mhm.
probably. That was just it was something different than either of my kids. It was like, oh, that stuck out.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I never even knew before that ARFID it's not uncommon to have that as one of the comorbidities with autism.
Mhm.
Um, you just hear, oh, they're just picky. It's a phase. And I'm like,
Right.
well, how
Right.
long do these phases last? And what if that's what we started off right off the bat?
Mhm. And actually, in terms of the struggle and challenges that I personally have with labels, in terms of using them for understanding versus pathologizing, RFID, everyone. So that stands for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. That is a newer diagnosis in the scheme of things. And it's been really helpful for so many um, in understanding this profile. So it is considered an eating disorder, but it is not a typical eating disorder like we think about with anorexia, bulimia, where it is based on a misperception of your body with body dysmorphia and your body image. It is purely sensory in nature, where kids have these really strong avoidant responses to many foods and have a really restrictive food intake. And for years, we did call it picky eating, or we talked oh, it's just a sensory issue. But it is something that really it causes a lot of family conflict. It causes a lot of stress and
Very much.
anxiety for the child. And so this is something, again, featured in your book with, and that's okay. Like, we do want to look into this because we don't want this to impact a child's health and nutrition. But most of these kids have their safety foods. And for years, like in our family, it was the same sandwich every day. It was the same breakfast every day. It was the same few foods every day until they decided to shift. And we had to learn, and so many of my clients, is it's okay. It does, and this is the point of your whole book. It's okay. Yes, we want to get medical professional consultation, but it's okay. We don't have to have our kids fit this mold. They need to have a large palate. They need to be able to try a bunch of foods. Like, all of these, they shoulds really cause a lot of stress for so many people and families who have neurodivergence.
It's like, they tell new moms, is it formula is best, breast is best. And then they're like, hey, how about fed is best?
Hmm. Yes, fed is best. Yes, and so also we'll move on, but I also want to say ARFID can become a health issue if it's so restrictive and the anxiety is so overwhelming. So that is to seek guidance if you are really concerned. And a lot of the time for these kids growing up, if you just stick with a restricted food palette that has enough nutrition in it, that might not be the lowest hanging fruit to deal with everything else you might be dealing with in your family at the time. Would you agree with that, or do you have different advice based on your experience?
Obviously, if when a child isn't gaining weight, and I know for some families, it can where they lose a safe food and they're really not eating much, or it's just goldfish crackers and apple juice. And, they work through it. And for some, they have to go to the extreme where they have to have a G tube so that they are getting, and then
Hmm.
they are still working on what they can by mouth, but having all right, we have this G tube so that they are going to still thrive nutritionally and what their brain and their body needs.
Hmm. Yeah, so it obviously can get very serious, and there is, like everything, there is a spectrum. So if you are concerned for anything, please go seek professional help. And also, I have to say, and Erin, I'm interested in your experience on this. Also, for you as parents, to trust your instincts too about your child, because we often get medical advice that might be somewhat fitting for us, or professional advice, and sometimes something just doesn't sit right because it doesn't feel like it captures your child. And I was going to say, and that's okay, right? And that's okay, and you need to trust.
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
the mantra of this book, because
yeah.
even in the whole purpose part of writing it and all the challenges that come for those who are still good academically and writing and language, but then those who are not, and don't feel like they fit that mold of what is a writer or an illustrator typically looks like, acts like, navigates like. That was a whole thing of, and that's okay, of that
Mm-hmm.
mantra.
Mm-hmm. There was some, as I was reading your book, and that's okay is said several times. With each one, I felt an inner sense of calmness and relief just saying, and that's okay. And I think I was, reflecting on just situations that maybe in the past we had been in with our own kids, thinking about different people in the world I know, thinking about clients, and it's like it sounds so simple, but if we just can say it's different and that's okay, how much of the discrimination and the like all of the challenges and the lack of understanding just goes away if we can just say, "It's okay. It's just different."
Yeah. Something like the most simple solutions are the best. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be overly complicated. It's like, I don't know what okay is going to look like or feel like, but that's okay.
Mhm. Right. And just as some examples for everyone, from the book, wearing a headset, noise cancellation headphones for auditory sensory overwhelm, deciding to doodle instead of go swimming with your friends because not preferring to be in the water, spinning and spinning and spinning on a merry-go-round, or something that gets all that sensory input, and that's the only thing you do at the park because that's what you like to do. Like there's just so many, and when you really think about it, it's like, man, why does everything have to be such a big deal? Why does everything have to be such a big deal?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, as in the last 20, 30 years, things that were kind of as the classic or simple, the ante has been upped and up. I mean, look at kids' birthday parties.
Mhm.
We have um, parents spending $800 for a video game truck to come, for these elaborate balloon decorations. And not to say that those are, if that's what you decide to do for your child and you want to, that's okay.
Mhm.
But it's just not always for everyone. But there's still kind of that, all right, how do I up the ante and continue with these? Okay, I don't know where I'm going on this.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, of just everything is just continuing more and more,
Mhm.
faster and faster,
Mhm.
of lifestyles experience, instead of just breathing and being and appreciating some simple things.
Yes. Yes, it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, I think that's like coming full circle. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated when it comes to success. The things you mentioned, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's focusing on those little things, those little moments. And with our kids and their development, there's so much pressure to fit in, to be normal, to be, I was going to say in the middle of the pack, but it's really the pressure to be in the top of the pack these days, like to be advanced and special and distinguish yourself. And what gets lost in all of that is a lot of um, people just being okay with who they are because you're just trying to be something else and not feeling like you are in many ways good enough in whatever those things are because you just have these differences. And so many of these kids and adults with these who see the world differently, are neurodiverse, have these tremendous strengths. But if those strengths don't fall in any of these categories, these academic categories, they're not focused on, but they're not. Hopefully parents are seeing that, but when it comes to all the people around, it's like, no, 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 no. They really need to look people in the eyes when they talk. They really need to get better with their handwriting. Like we focus on these things, and so of course, dysgraphia people, another neurodiverse, where you have sloppy handwriting syndrome, which is something that I have
Not
had it.
just sloppy handwriting, but it also affects language, written language.
Yes, yes. Right. So when you can talk at this level, but the writing comes at this lower level because it impacts the way you're able to put pen to paper. And these,
Convert thoughts in
yes,
brain into written words.
yes.
That was one thing I noticed with my oldest son, where, like, okay, handwriting's really atrocious, but even just it was an assignment. I have to do a diorama in third grade, and just to write some simple sentences, and I would just notice, oh, wait a minute, there's something very different off here. And it was through just kind of a rabbit trail of something else that this son actually had brought up from his music teacher of like, oh, what synesthesia is and such. And I did my own little research on that. And then down below, they're like, oh, could you be? And they have various ones. I'm like, oh, I know dyslexic. I know that. I'm like, wait, what's dysgraphia? So I go there and go, oh my goodness, this is what my son has.
Mm-hmm.
Teacher had no clue about what it was, etc. And I said, no, this describes what these learning deficits that he has, that he's struggling with and
Mm-hmm.
has.
Mm-hmm.
And, mom had to advocate and research because the school wasn't going to come to me with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I relate. I have memories, and my mom can attest to many days, nights at the dinner table, crying over having to write reports. I think fifth grade was when it all culminated with these longer reports. It was just torturous, and um, that we didn't know about dysgraphia at that time, but it is real, and it causes not only a lot of stress, but a lot of family stress and homework stress and school related stress. Erin, I have two questions for you, which it's one question with two parts before we go to the parent footprint moment question. And that is, what is your advice to neurodiverse parents raising neurodiverse kids?
That I would say you don't have to enjoy every moment of being a parent. There are many times where I don't want to be touched. I am touched out. I don't want to be hugged. I want to be left alone. But our society is like, oh, you're supposed to always embrace your children and everything. And no, there are parts of parenthood that are hard, but there are parts
Mm-hmm.
of parenthood that are even harder when you just want to be left alone, when it's the morning and you're just having to field all these questions. It's people say to me now, it's like, well, what did you expect parenthood would be like? And it's like, well, probably because I bought into that lie that said that when your children are real young, those are the hard years and that's when they need you the most. And I'm finding that that was a lie.
Mm.
That as my kids are getting older, they are needing me so much more than having to give them a snack or making sure that they have bubbles for, and there's sand and water for outside the sand and water table to entertain, because I could still kind of have this mental I wasn't fielding a bunch of questions and demands, and they weren't then questioning things that I was saying other than, no, I don't want to do that. But as the kids get older, they need you more. If they have special
Mm-hmm.
needs, they're going to need you even more
Mm-hmm.
so. And it's okay if you're just not digging this phase.
Mm-hmm. That's
You don't
okay.
have to
Yeah.
try to carpe diem
Yeah.
everything.
Yes.
Because there's things I think even then I'm like, oh no, man, I think it's telling me like I am definitely feeling done. I mean, do I miss the simpler times? I do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think I miss it in different ways than others would think
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to miss it.
Yeah, and very important that we're fed so much about how it's supposed to be and how we're supposed to feel, and then we as parents feel less than, or there's something wrong with us when we don't feel that way all the time. So I appreciate you pointing out some of the myths and lies about parenting, because it can be really, really hard. And yes, with neurodiverse kids, that difficulty and the challenges that go with getting older and navigating the world in our social culture, there's a lot out there to navigate.
Especially when you're trying to help your own children navigate socially and they want friends and you want them to have friends, but you don't necessarily run in those same social circles. And you almost need like a special needs Friendster, like a dating site, but it's just for playmates,
Mm-hmm.
to try to get them connected to their people that they may not come across in their class or classes in their school.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder and harder nowadays because parents don't see other parents. The kids are on there, they take a school bus, so you don't see parents even at drop off because parents are kept in the car in the parent drop off, and there's
Mm-hmm.
not that
Mm-hmm.
potential for interaction unless you are paying hundreds of dollars a month for them to be involved in an extracurricular where parents are waiting, watching their children participate, and you might have those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. You just came up with a creative idea for a play date site, a neurodivergent play date site. Just putting it back at you, your creativity right there. Okay. Okay. Then the second part of this question is: do you have any advice or words of wisdom for neurotypical parents raising neurodiverse kids?
um, I would say, and I see this a lot with in parent support groups for those who have special needs kids, whether they are medically complex or they have their own developmental challenges. But to not see, and I know this goes into that where we had person first language, to now some of the move is moving away from person first language to as being a part of identity, of it's not like it's okay to say that your child is autistic instead of saying, oh, my child who's with autism on the spectrum. I think of when they say on the spectrum, I just think of a kid riding a bucking bronco rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to kind of take their child's lead, get involved in what their things are,
Mm-hmm.
instead of trying to force your ideas of, oh, well, you're supposed to be doing sports, you're supposed to be doing that. Take up on their interests.
Mm-hmm.
Support them in that. Give them those opportunities of what they're interested in,
Mm-hmm.
not what society says that all kids are supposed to be interested in,
Mm-hmm.
because they want a well-rounded individual.
Yes.
You are there to support them of how to come with like a toolbox of strategies, because you can't protect them from everything and every person. You
Mm-hmm.
have to give them those opportunities to grow. And part of growing is being frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, but how do we handle? I mean, I can't, my kids go to public school. They're on the school bus, and all the time they still like, please, can I be a parent transport? And for our family and logistics and sanity, it's just not in the cards. But
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be that difficult individual that they're going to come across.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but can you, to be that person though, that your child will come to you when there's difficulty so that you can advocate and help be and carry their voice when they need their voice carried farther than they're able to.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for imparting your experience and wisdom to our listeners. And we're going to end with the parent footprint moment question. And here we go. Tell us about a time that you became aware of yourself as an individual, as a parent, or even an awareness of your own parents. And that new awareness had a positive impact on your life, your kids, and or those you love.
I would say it was kind of an awareness, but of awareness of the past that brought to the present. When I graduated from high school, they say, oh, yes, you're going to change. But man, I just felt there was this real changing of this self awareness of myself, almost as if this blanket was being taken off. And even later on, I look at, oh, that was a veil. That was a part of unmasking myself, where I started to rediscover the person that I was, my personality when I was, when you're like 4 or 5 years old, before you have the influences of school and social groups, where you have a different confidence or your interests, or, like, are you that shy child? Are you not that shy child? Of course, taking things that are not healthy or good, where if there is trauma, if there is abuse, neglect, those other things, but where you would be proud of what you were wearing because you thought that polka dots and stripes and a tutu,
Mm-hmm.
with going around in rain boots, like that was the most awesome outfit. And you were so proud and you didn't care
Mm-hmm.
what other people thought. And I just kind of felt like I was rediscovering
Mm.
part of that 4 or 5 year old child, that in kindergarten, back when kindergarten, preschool was really just kindergarten and preschool and not like, you know, entry level first grade.
Right. Right.
Uh, and as far as that being a part of me as a parent, and I think this is one of the hardest things of being a parent, is now I've gone through life and I have my own experiences, and I have had the rules very, at times, harshly, just almost like the fear of God put into you, um, where I have to, I still have to make sure that as I am guiding my children as they're growing, developing, that I let their personalities be them, and to not try to squash their personalities out for the sake of social construct rules. Where, like,
Mm-hmm.
where do I step in to guide, and where do I need to step back? But it can be very painful when one of my children, who's very social, and in my head it's just like, oh, she's breaking this rule, she's breaking that rule, these just, oh, this is just torture of, but I'm like, you know what? It's okay to be friendly.
Mm-hmm.
She notices people where, I mean, she was really little, and this person was in their car. We were getting out of the car in McDonald's parking lot, and they were in a car that was really beat up and rusty, and And it probably looked like they may have had to, be living in their car. And they kind of had their window down, and she's, 4 or 5, and goes, "Oh, your car is so pretty."
Hmm.
Now, if she started talking to a stranger, if I had gone, "Oh," and like, "Oh no," like, and to quiet her, like, "Oh, we don't talk to strangers, sweetie."
Mm-hmm.
But who knows what my daughter's words, the effect that they had on them, and the day they could have been having, of just the kindness that she showed. And she saw someone and saw them not for something that was, of ugly or dirty, but just in her world, she just thought that it was really a pretty car.
Mm. That's beautiful. That's a message that they might have very much needed in that moment. Yeah. Erin, well, thank you for spending some time with us and sharing your experience and being a champion for neurodiversity. I want to read the words that you finished the book in to you and also to our listeners. You are seen, you are important, you are wonderfully made. Please tell everyone where they can get this beautiful book I'm holding, and that's okay. I'm wired differently, which is both written and illustrated by you, Erin Geddes.
Yes, you can find this book on quite a few places of online retailers. I mean, of course, there's the big giant. We know the big brother Amazon, but you can find it on BarnesandNoble.com. It's found from Walmart.com. I mean, for the lexicon of our language, just Google it,
Yes.
and you will find various different ways. It is published by Redemption Press. Uh, and that, in addition, there's a social media, there's a QR code on the back. I'm very much of not just providing this book, but also helping bring light and breaking stereotypes of different neurodiversities, of breaking the stereotypes and giving these supports and painting some things in some more positive light, everything down to even Phobia Fridays of, there are people that this really affects their life. And that's okay. And how can we just better support them than to say, "Oh, that's just silly."
Yes, and I do want to echo that. Everyone go to Erin's Instagram, Facebook. There are just beautifully designed images that speak to educate and speak to so many different types of neurodivergence in a way that is just so visually appealing and inviting, and that we get to also see your talented visual graphic arts that you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I know you're thinking about all the people you're going to send this episode to, because it will provide light to their day. Thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for your 5-star reviews. They really do make a difference. You know what I'm going to ask you to do before we leave. Try to be the person you want your child to become, and ask yourself the guiding question: what footprint do you want to leave? This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Strummer Man, composed and performed by Pro Tunes. Artwork is by Garrett Ross. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Footprint Podcast, and on Twitter at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, go to exactlyrightmedia.com.